I'm Ewan Ross. I'm a program manager. I've worked in IT for over 20 years, starting off as a developer on coding mainframes for Y2K, working way up through business analyst, project manager, and then program manager.
Hi, I'm Abasa. I work in data analysis and data science. I got involved in the STA so I could work on data projects that would be able to give back to the third sector.
The dashboard, the front page, is just about trying not to overwhelm people with information at the beginning, introducing them gently to the topic. On the main page, we start by introducing the Scottish greenhouse gas emissions. So this wonderful interactive plot that you can go into the breakdown of all the different elements of each sector. We've organised it so that it shows the change in emissions between that period of time. And the area where the change has been greatest is energy supply, making sure that we're using megatons of CO2 equivalent and very standard reference points, so you get to compare like with like, because once you start getting into the deeper data, it's easy to lose perspective on what is and what isn't. The breakdown we've got here in the sunburst diagram is it's completely by sector, and then if you click on each one, you then see how that then breaks down to all the different little bits that contribute to the emissions.
One of the things we're looking at is the changes in trends over time. And one of the things that you will find, which is quite interesting, is how the trends change during the lockdown period. So in general, there is a rise over time in cycling. But what you then see is that there's a sudden rise during lockdown, and especially in May 2020, when there's actually quite good weather. And if you look at the pedestrian data, you can also see the huge surge compared to previous years when lockdown happened. Taking something that already did, I knew there were certain things that were happening with cycling. For instance, we had gone from amazing quiet streets, and as soon as you got used to them, went insane when they let the drivers back on the road. That when lockdown lifted, there was a drop in the amount of cycling and also in pedestrians. Looking at the data and seeing that spike, I was like, okay, it's not just we're all seeing it, the data is reflecting exactly what we're seeing out there. So one of the other things that we looked at as well in the data was how things changed during different days of the week. And what stands out is you get a surge around about the 2 peak periods, which gives an indication of a fair number of commuters. And then if you go to 2020, what stands out is the fact that you're no longer seeing that huge surge with commuting traffic. However, what you notice is that you're getting a bit of a flattening, and cycling at the weekends, which is the broken line, you can see tends to look quite different from cycling during the day. If you look at all the counts over time and you look specifically at locations, what changes, and you can cycle through the years to see how this has changed, where we're getting data from, and how that data is changing. One of the things we started to look at was what influence does maybe weather have on what is going on. There's the obvious, it's a bit colder in January, but it's not just about temperature. Sometimes rainfall also has a bit of an impact. So there's a fair bit of information across the data that we have, and this gives you the opportunity to go through it and look at specific areas that are of interest, whether it's time of the day, time of the year, and specific locations and so on.
The graduates of CodePlan have done a variety of different visualizations of the data. This was some work done that was specifically UK-wide, and it was visualizations and different options that we could show the emissions and different ways of presenting the different sectors with which they were done, and ways of presenting the different constituents with which the emissions are generated. This was the analysis on the home energy data. Stephanie did this. This is all of people's properties that have had a survey done as part of either renting it or selling it. That's all been added into the database. This calculation is done on mean energy consumption per meter square per year. Basically trying to see which houses are the ones that generate the most emissions. And here it is, it's coloured up, and you can see emissions by floor area separated by council area.
What you're saying is that I think for me, Ireland was like, I love this stuff. And for me, I think the flexibility of I can do what I want to do is easy. Whereas, I guess, I think for some people it was just, where do I start? Being confident that it's perfectly fine to fail. And also, for me, it was about exploring.
So one of the things I was thinking about with the Code Clan graduates, I think that I learned particularly was just what they could do. So I didn't know what you could possibly do with R, and all of a sudden there's these kids just appearing, and it's like, oh, here's the thing, spent a couple of weeks, whoosh, wow, that's amazing, the presentation, the data, and then you think, oh, did they just take a shortcut? And then you look at the code underneath it, and you see all the cleaning that's had to go on, and all the formatting, and you're like, all right, that's quite a bit of work underneath, and there's a lot of skill involved in that, so it's helped me appreciate just the skills that they're bringing to the party as well, definitely.
I hadn't done Plotly before. I knew about it, I tried it, but I've had to actually learn how to get it to make things work, because it was the thing of balancing what technology we could use that wouldn't cost somebody lots of money and that actually do what we wanted to do. And it was like, okay, that seems to work, and actually I can use it for both projects, which means that I save time. And that's been brilliant, because even though that wasn't the point, I can now put on my CV to say, I can do X and this is how I've used it for this reason. And that's been great. So for me, it was getting involved in something I wanted to do and then stumbling on this problem. It's like, right, how do you solve it? If you're interested in what we're doing and have any other questions that haven't already been answered, get in touch and we'll see what we can do working with you to find answers.